Thank you, and welcome, everyone. I appreciate the devotion at this early hour to to learn more about this candidacy of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. We heard as a caucus earlier from two experts at our last regular membership meeting about how to organize our thoughts around this race. We will drop a link in the chat to their excellent presentation for anyone who wishes to review it on YouTube. I highly recommend that. In the meantime, we have received over 90 questions from over 170 registrants to this, and we have condensed these down it's really an amazing performance of participatory democracy, and we are so happy that we have our host, Erin Aubry Kaplan, to help us with that. A writer and journalist from Southern California. She's been studying urban dynamics for decades. I'll put a link to her bio in the chat. She has agreed to moderate this forum for us. Thank you so much. She has a keen understanding of culture and politics. She's an ideal guide for us to explore this political post. I would hand this over to her in a moment, but let me say a quick word about our format. You know what? I'm going to switch things up. We have issues with Senator Muratsuchi needing to get back to the floor, and so we will go straight to introductions, and then after that, I'll come back and say a word about the format and let Erin take it on. Does that make sense to everyone? Thank you. Senator Muratsuchi, let us please hear from you, your introduction, and the apologies that he will not be able to join us. Or I'm not sure how long you can stay. Maybe you can stay for a little of it. And I will repeat that our sixth candidate, Andra Hoffman, has unfortunately been called away for a family emergency. So I will read a statement when the time comes. We've randomized the order of people's answers and questions and answers, and we'll do that then. So thank you.
Should I take it away, Sarah? Okay, all right. Well, good morning, Democrats. Yes, Sarah,
I'm
should I go
sorry.
ahead?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that our timer, Matthew Hilliard, should also be pinned, and there should be a clock coming up at that time for
And
3 minutes.
minutes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, Democrats. I'm Al Muratsuchi, and I'm running to be your next state superintendent of public instruction. I'm running for this very important position because I have a longstanding record of serving as an educator, as a former local school board president, and now as chair of the Assembly Education Committee. And especially in this moment, I want to fight for our students, our educators, and our schools when public education is under attack. By way of background, I was born and raised on U.S. military bases overseas before I arrived in Berkeley, California in 1982. I'm a son of immigrants, a product of public schools, and a first-generation college graduate. My parents taught me that a good education is the best ticket to achieve the American dream. I went to Berkeley for college and earned my Juris Doctor degree at UCLA. I teach government at El Camino Community College in Torrance, California, and I'm a proud member of the American Federation of Teachers, Local 1388. I'm a former Torrance Unified School Board president, and currently I serve as a California Assembly member, as well as chair of the Assembly Education Committee, where we make statewide education policy impacting nearly 6 million California public school students throughout the state. I have a strong record of fighting for public education, and especially for our most vulnerable students. To fight Donald Trump's attacks on our immigrant students, I introduced the California Safe Haven Schools Act, AB 49, that is now on the governor's desk to keep ICE out of our schools. I wrote the Fair Pay for Educators Act so that we can give teachers, as well as our essential school staff, a 50% pay raise over the next 10 years. To fight book banning, I wrote the California Freedom to Read Act, which was signed into law last year. And to provide safe and modern schools for all, I wrote Proposition 2, the $10 billion statewide school bond that California voters passed overwhelmingly last year. My vision as your next state superintendent will be, number one, good public schools in every neighborhood so that every child can receive a good education regardless of who you are and where you live. Number two, full education funding so that we can have smaller class sizes, increase teacher and classified staff pay, community schools with wraparound support services like free meals, mental health care, and universal preschool. And three, to prepare students for the jobs of the 21st century, whether to prepare them for college or to teach them a trade. Is that my time? Oh,
yes. That's
okay.
time.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And I can, we actually are starting session at 10 a.m. They pushed it back a little bit, and so I can stick around until for a few more minutes. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Erin will introduce our next candidate, please.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. Well, I'm very happy to be here. We'll just keep going. Let's Anthony Rendon. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. Good to see you.
3 minutes starting now.
Good to see everyone, and good morning. I'm running for superintendent of public instruction because this is really the only job that we elect statewide that deals solely with children, that is focused solely on the lives of children and making sure that children have the best opportunities available. I worked in early childhood education for about 20 years, running Head Start programs, early childhood education programs, which were divided between infants and toddler programs, state preschool, state child care programs, state migrant farm worker programs. And that's what brought me to Sacramento in 2011. There were drastic cuts that the Schwarzenegger administration, draconian cuts, that forced my own nonprofit. Our funding was cut from about $31 per child per day to $17 per child per day. And a bunch of us, about 4 of us, who were leaders in early childhood education, all decided to run for office in 2011, 2012. For me to be speaker at a time when we not only reinvested the $1.2 billion that were cut, but reinvested about double that, I think was really said a lot about this state's recognition of early childhood education and the importance that has on the lives of kids. For me, as somebody who had a 0.83 grade point average in high school, struggled, had his educational career resurrected through the community colleges, who ended up graduating from Cal State Fullerton with a BA degree, ended up getting a PhD in the UC system. I went through the entire California public education, higher education system, and saw the impact that can have on the lives of Californians, particularly working class Californians. So for me, my story is a success story of public education, and I want to make sure that other folks have that same opportunity. So for me, I'm focused on that, specifically that's cradle to grave aspect of education, of public education, making sure that we have a TK program that works throughout the state. We've implemented great TK programs in this state, but it's uneven. The implementation is uneven, and we know that, particularly in communities such as mine in Southeast Los Angeles County. I think another important thing that the superintendent of public instruction needs to do is really to track the mental health issues of children, particularly within the context of new and sort of rising technologies and social medias. That is an incredible crisis in our communities. And finally, I think the real task for this next superintendent is to defend public education from Donald Trump's attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Rendon. The next, Richard Barrera.
Thank you so much, Erin. Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Barrera. I currently serve as Senior Policy Advisor to Superintendent Tony Thurmond at the California Department of Education. I lead the department's initiatives around developing housing for educators, reducing chronic absenteeism, supporting our whole child division, which focuses on student wellness and mental health, as well as protecting our immigrant students. And I'm also in my 17th year on the San Diego Unified School Board. We're the second largest district in California. And I think what's important right now, it's certainly not new that we're seeing attacks on public education coming from conservatives. We've experienced that for, really 4 decades, going back to Prop 13. But I think it's important that when we see these attacks that are generally framed around the notion that public schools are failing our kids, so we need to disinvest from them, we need to counter that with examples of success. So a couple of months ago, the U.S. Senate Help Committee had a hearing that the Republicans had brought together to make the argument that test scores were low across the country, particularly in the NAEP scores, the Nation's Report Card, and therefore we should disinvest and put money into private school vouchers. And the ranking Democrat on the committee asked me to come out and provide a counterexample. And I was able to do that because in our district in San Diego Unified, with a consistent record of investing in our students, so we have consistently invested in our teachers. A teacher who began their career 20 years ago making less than $40,000 a year is now making nearly $130,000 a year with fully paid family health benefits. We've gone to our voters 4 times in the last decade and passed bond measures that currently total $11.5 billion in our one district, so larger than the state's entire bond program. And the results are clear. San Diego Unified, when compared to all large urban districts across the country on this very Nation's Report Card, we rank number 1 in the country in literacy, and we're tied for number 1 in math. Among all large urban districts in California, San Diego Unified ranks number 1 in literacy, math, graduation rates, college readiness rates, science. You go through all of it. We have produced a track record of success that I believe offers the best counter to these arguments that our public schools are failing. Our public schools work. We've got heroes educating our students every day. We need to support our public schools with a new generation of investment that Californians are capable of delivering.
Thank you. Next, Andra is not here, correct? She's not here.
Yes, and so with your indulgence, I will read the statement from her, for her.
Go,
And-
please.
Great, and thank everyone for your understanding. She had a family emergency. I'm not Andra Hoffman, but she has to say, I, Andra Hoffman, bring nearly 30 years of experience as a teacher, a leader, and an educational administrator. Before Ms. Hoffman ever stepped into college leadership, she was raising 2 children as a single mother while working in 2 nonprofit organizations dedicated to children's well-being. Those early years gave Ms. Hoffman a deep understanding of the challenges families face and the importance of having strong public schools. Ms. Hoffman joined Glendale College to lead an early childhood literacy program funded through AmeriCorps and the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. Later, she secured another AmeriCorps grant focused on teacher training and partnered with Glendale Unified School District to create future teacher clubs. Together with Cal State LA, they built a pathway where students transferred as a cohort into a blended program, earning their bachelor's degrees and teaching credentials. To this day, Ms. Hoffman still runs into former students who have now been teachers for nearly 25 years. That's the kind of lasting impact public education can have. Since 2008, Ms. Hoffman's been teaching California state and local government and politics as an adjunct professor. At Glendale College, she learned She currently serves as an administrator overseeing counseling, faculty, and staff in the Career Center Job Placement Center and Transfer Center. Most recently, she stepped in as acting dean of student services, managing 70 employees, including classified staff, faculty, and student workers. Beyond the college, she's served for over a decade as a trustee on the Los Angeles Community College District Board, the largest of the nation, where she's held every executive leadership role, including president. She serves on the Statewide Community College League of California Trustee Board, where she spent the last 9 years in executive roles, including president. As a mother and educator and a leader, Ms. Hoffman knows firsthand the opportunities and the challenges in California's schools. That's why she's running for Superintendent of Public Instruction, to bring all of this experience to a higher level and ensure that public schools work for every child in every community. If elected, Ms. Hoffman will focus on strengthening literacy and math skills and ensure that all students are exposed to civics and government classes, expanded career pathways, apprenticeships, and workforce education, because not all kids want to go to a 4-year university, and will work on improving teacher recruitment and retention. She also wishes to focus on special education funding and support which is at risk, and will fight to protect every child's right to a safe, fair, and fully funded public education, regardless of immigration status, background, or circumstance. California is the 4th largest economy in the world, and our schools should reflect that strength by preparing every student to succeed. Ms. Hoffman believes in public education, believes in our children, and believes in the future of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Nichelle Henderson.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Nichelle Henderson. I'm an educator, immediate past president of the Los Angeles Community College District Board of Trustees. The Los Angeles Community College Board of Trustees is the largest community college system in the free world. We have 9 colleges and educating just under 250,000 students annually. And I am running to be the 29th State Superintendent of Public Instruction. I'm running because I believe that all children deserve to be educated in a system that centers their success regardless of their ethnicity, their citizenship, academic, or physical ability. This happens when their parents are engaged, their teachers are supported, and they are provided with opportunities for sustainable pathways to academic and economic success. As an educator with over 30 years experience in K-12 education, starting out as a parent volunteer, when my now 34-year-old son began preschool, as a classroom aide, a 6th grade classroom teacher, and now as a multiple subjects teacher educator in the CSU, I not only imagine this system, I believe I have the academic and professional background necessary to remove barriers to access and remake the current system to ensure that all students succeed. The State Superintendent of Public Instruction is a state constitutional officer that serves as the chief champion for education across the state. And I have a track record as a K-12 public school classroom teacher, educator, and union advocate of advocating for education stakeholders. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Nichelle. And last but hardly least, Josh Newman.
Well, thank you for saying hardly least. I appreciate it. So good morning, everybody. So thank you, first of all, for the Condemned Children's Caucus for hosting what I believe is the first large-scale candidates forum. So kudos to you. And also thank you and my condolences to my former colleague, Assemblymember Muratsuchi, for the work that you're doing. It's necessary but painful. So I'm proud to have served as the chair of the Senate Committee on Education till last December. And over the course of my service, I learned a bunch of things, but primarily California's public education system is enormous. Nearly 6 million students across 58 counties, over 977 districts, over 10,000 schools. And over the last 20 years, despite increased spending, California still languishes in the bottom quartile of states and behind states like Texas, Florida, and New York. And equally concerning, I think, to all of us, the gaps between high achieving and low achieving students continues to grow. And those gaps generally correlate with income and demographics as well. I am a graduate of Yale University. I'm an Army veteran. Prior to entering public service, I had a successful career in business. and very proud of and grateful for the opportunity I've served as a member of the California State Senate representing North Orange County and southeastern LA County. I am running for State Superintendent of Public Instruction because I believe we need systems level alignment in so many ways, and the SPI is probably the only person in our system who can do that. California's education system is complicated, as I mentioned. There's no silver bullet. We need a superintendent who can convene, collaborate, and create lasting change, and more than anything, force the governor and the legislature to elevate education issues and make them the priority that they are. My campaign priorities are fairly straightforward, and they're not too different than some of my colleagues here. One, pushing back on the Trump attacks on education and on California. Two, systems alignment. I was in the military. I was always impressed. Wasn't a very military guy, but how well the military handled large scale, small scale units across a huge geography. We need to do something similar and do it better in California. Three, improving achievement gaps across the state. Four, better aligning the school day and the work day. And this is a very important priority, and it often doesn't get discussed. If you're a working parent in California, you are really challenged getting your kid to school and managing your career and your time. We need to center that. And we also need to center students and increase the urgency with which we address all of these issues. And so what often gets lost in many of these conversations is whether you have a student in school, whether you have a kid or not, education matters to everybody. Public education is the single most powerful engine of economic advancement and social mobility. We need to invest in California and fix our system to do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Thank you all. I just want to add really a very brief bio of my own bio. So I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles. I'm a total product of California public schools. I graduated Gardena High School, 79. I went to Yay! I went to UCLA. Yay!
Yeah, UCLA.
And I just want to say two things. One is I appreciate Sarah's kind introduction. I'm not as versed in education as my father, Larry Aubry, was an activist, and he always taught me education, as Josh just said, is the path to so much, as you've all seen in many ways. My family came from the South. They came to California because of, opportunities of equity, equality, and to see it under attack now, to see the very idea of public good under attack is something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. But we all know history does not go in a straight line. And I'll just say one thing about Gardena High School in the late 70s. It was long before people were talking about diversity and how do we make things diverse? It was extremely diverse school. It was like equal parts white, Mexican American, Asian American, Pacific Islander. But you know what it was a wonderful experience, one that never repeated in my life. That was in the rear view. That was I realized what a rare moment that was. But the common thread for everyone was economic stability. There was not the incredible wealth gap that we have now. Things were never perfect, but it was a setting that that in many ways was ideal. So, Will, it's just something that I think about fondly now, and I hope we can somehow bring that back in these really, really challenging times. So let's continue on. First sort of icebreaker question. Just a simple question that you can take about 2 minutes to answer, which is, what does a successful California educational system look like to you? And we'll start with Speaker Rendon.
Thank you. I think a successful public educational system in California is one that's ultimately about equity. We've seen we have great public schools in some parts of our state and some parts of LA County where I live. In other parts of our state, you have schools that are failing. You have schools that are not up to par at all. Ultimately, if our public education system is going to work, we need to make sure that every child in every school, regardless of their geography, regardless of their zip code, has the opportunities that you were talking about, Ms. Kaplan. It's ultimately about where you live. To a large extent, right now, where you live determines the extent to which you get a quality education, and it should not be like that at all.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Ms. Henderson.
Thank you. A successful education in California looks like all students experiencing academic success based on their needs. Not a one-size-fits-all program where a curriculum is implemented in a way that allows students to fall through the proverbial cracks. It's a system where instructional curriculum is culturally relevant. Teachers and counselors are trained to support and deliver curriculum in an unbiased manner, and parents are involved and children are encouraged to be their best.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Newman.
Okay, so I agree with my colleagues here. Let me answer the question in a slightly different direction. Having said that, I think we often lose sight of the student, and a successful public school education should produce thoughtful, critical thinkers who are well prepared for the workforce needs of the future and who are fully prepared and well educated to participate fully in civic life. I mean, I think it's that simple. There's been a huge debate around AB 715. I think somebody just brought it up in the chat, and that gets to this larger question about whether or not we're doing that well. We need to elevate civic education within the education system and critical thinking. And if we had a better emphasis there, we might not be having some of the fights we're having that are so driven by politics and ideology. So our education system should center that while, to Anthony's point, illuminating innovation. There are some wonderful successes across the state, across this massive system, but we need to identify them and figure out how to use them as the basis for replication and scale. There are some other instances where schools are failing, and enforcement and compliance have to be central to CDE's mission, and the SBI has to elevate that as well and find the tools and the consensus to push back really hard to make sure that every student is getting their full share of attention and resources. And now, I often sat in committee hearings and we'd say to a witness, like, this is great, we've got a solution. It'll take a 3-year workout, a 6-year implementation. 10 years from now, we'll have solved the problem. What you're saying when you do that is that we lack urgency and we don't care about the current generation of students. We have to elevate urgency as central to everything we do.
Okay, well said. Mr. Barrera.
Thanks, Erin. It's a great question. So it makes me immediately think yesterday morning, we welcomed the Latino School Boards Association to San Diego. So school board members from all over the state came. And at the opening ceremony, we had a large group of mariachis from our Logan Memorial Educational Campus in Logan Heights that came and performed. These are students that a couple of years ago had never picked up a musical instrument and were now beautifully performing in front of a large audience. Logan Memorial is a school that when I started on the school board, parents didn't want to send their kids there. The reputation was terrible. The facilities were terrible. Everything that we as a school system communicated to families in the neighborhood was, we don't care about your kids. The new Logan Memorial that we've rebuilt is a $200 million investment in the community. That's a state-of-the-art campus where parents actually, with the youngest kids, we have a Montessori program for kids as young as 6 months, and now it goes through 12th grade. We've got partnerships with UC San Diego. We've got a compact with the California state system where students who graduate go on to college. But mainly what I think about are those kids who are up there with full confidence, belief in themselves, performing through the arts. And that's what an education system is about. We don't, as adults, we can't possibly know what kids are going to need to do 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But what we can do is invest in them, let them know that we care about them so that they've got the confidence to go off and make our society better.
Great. Well said. And finally, Assemblyman Muratsuchi.
Well, thank you very much. This will be my last opportunity to participate before I have to go back to state capitol. But I would say 2 things. Number one is we have to focus on the basics. We have to, have best practices in our schools so that every child is reading at grade level, and that we need to, every child is performing at grade level, whether for reading or for math. This year I was very proud to work on legislation and to deliver over $200 million to focus on best practices for evidence-based literacy instruction in California public schools statewide, so that we can get, the reading is such a foundational skill, and we need to make sure that every child can read at grade level. So those are the kinds of basics that we need to focus. But we know that our schools are so much more than just academics. We need to take the whole child approach, support.
Hi, I'm
all of the
Lauren.
needs.
I'm on our customer success.
And so to that end, I have focused on increasing funding so that we can have not only smaller class sizes, but the wraparound services, the mental health services, universal meals, universal preschool programs. Those are the kind of whole need child approach that we need to take in our California public schools. And thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Assemblymember Muratsuchi. So now, this is next question. It's just kind of a simple yes or no. Maybe you can say a little bit about it if it's a yes. And that is, and some of you mentioned it already, but have you ever taught in the K-12 classroom? And we'll start with Mr. Rendon.
No, I've never taught in the K-12 classroom. I taught in early childhood education and the California community colleges, Cal State system, and UC system, though.
Good enough. We'll allow that. Mr. Newman?
I actually have. For when I first came to California, fresh out of the military, I worked for about a year as a substitute teacher in San Francisco private schools, typically 7th and 8th grade, and it was an education.
Yeah, I substitute taught. I can say the same thing.
And for anybody, watch Key and Peele, the substitute teacher skits. They get it.
Okay, thanks for that recommendation. Mr. Barrera.
I've taught in the community college system, and I support leadership development through a nonprofit program, the Cesar Chavez Service Clubs, with elementary, middle, and high school students in our public schools.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Ms. Henderson.
Yes, I am a former 6th grade public school teacher. I taught math and science for 5 years, and for 2 years I taught pre-algebra and algebra and math intervention to 7th and 8th grade students.
Well, that's great. That was 6th grade. Was that middle? That was middle school, not grade school. Not
Correct.
You didn't change when I was back in the day. 6th grade
Was elementary.
And anyway, I'm showing my age. Next question, also a yes, no, a little more complicated, but the question is, do you support the basis of K-12 local school funding? Do you support that on the basis of attendance, which is the status quo, or enrollment? And I'll start with Mr. Barrera.
We absolutely need to move to an enrollment-based system. California is one of 7 states, and the rest of them are all very conservative states that continue with this ADA-based system. It makes no sense to penalize schools and take away resources when we should be investing in efforts to increase attendance. And so an enrollment-based system would actually allow us to put the resources that we need into supporting increasing attendance in our schools.
Okay. Mr. Rendon?
I agree. We absolutely need to have an enrollment-based system. We not only need to have that in K-12, but we need to have that in all California Department of Education funded child development programs as well. It's really the only way toward equity. We know that things have changed quite a bit, particularly since COVID. So we need to make that change as soon as possible.
Okay. Mr. Newman?
I agree. I actually was a co-author of Senator Portantino's bill a couple of years ago to do exactly this. Agree with both, and I'll add, especially post-COVID, we are penalizing the wrong schools that are having real troubles with chronic absenteeism. That's upside down, and we need to think about better. Secondly, we've got small schools that are, because of ADA, falling below what is probably viability levels of funding. And that's not okay either. So agree completely. We need to move to a different system.
Okay, yeah, I happen to live in a district in Inglewood, in a district that is falling apart because of attrition and attendance, and it's alarming. Ms. Henderson.
Yes, I do agree. We also need to come up with meaningful alternatives for the ways that students attend school also, especially now as we're looking at these ICE raids and parents are afraid to send their children to school. Children are afraid to be in school. We need to have some mechanism that allows them to attend school virtually or some alternative so that they don't miss out on their education.
Oh yeah. Think times have changed. Okay, thank you for that. Next question, again, a quick answer with a little elaboration if you want. And that is, are you, and some of you actually addressed this already, but let's just reiterate. Are you a current union member? Mr. Newman?
I'm not a current union member. I have been a member of a union, IATSE 44 in North Hollywood. So former member, proud member of a union, proud supporter of the labor movement.
Okay, and I'm sorry, and what union was that you mentioned?
That's the set dressers and prop makers union for Hollywood. And for those of you who want to find, you go to Austin Powers, watch the Fembot scene. I'm one of the guards in the Fembot scene, so we can talk about that anytime.
Claim to fame. Okay, great. Ms. Henderson, are you a current union member?
I am a member of the California Faculty Association. We are SEIU 1983.
Good year. Okay. All right. That's year I graduated UCLA. But Mr. Barrera.
I'm not actually currently a union member. I've spent my career in the labor movement. So I've worked for the United Domestic Workers. I've worked for SEIU, United Healthcare Workers, the Nurses Association. And I was the secretary treasurer of the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council for a few years. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And Mr. Rendon.
Yes, I am a member of a union. I'm a current member of the California Faculty Association. When I taught in the Cal State system, I was an active member. Now I'm a legacy member. Now that I'm not teaching in the Cal State system, I'm a legacy member of the union.
Great. And one last what we call fast round question, a quick question, and I apologize for the brevity of this answer, but considering the question is, do you support or oppose AB 15, which is the state bill around anti-Semitism and ethnic studies that's currently in the legislature?
To clarify, it's AB 715.
715.
I'm sorry. What did I say? I'm sorry. Excuse me. 715. We'll start with Mr. Rendon.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I know there were amendments in the past 24 to 48 hours. I don't know what those amendments entailed. I do have a tremendous amount of trepidation about bills that are amended at the last minute, particularly to meet the 72-hour Munger provisions. It's problematic, and they don't often get their proper vetting, and this is exactly a case of that. I don't know the final status of the bill in terms of the amendments.
Okay. Mr. Barrera?
Yeah, I agree with Anthony. I don't know the current state of the bill. I am extremely concerned that the state is not funding ethnic studies this year. We were the first district, I think, in California to establish ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. It's a critical component with proven success. Students simply do better when the curriculum is relevant to their experience and honest about history. And we need to stop attacking ethnic studies. But we need to work together to make sure ethnic studies focuses on its core intent of working with Native American students, AAPI students, Black and Latino students. But we can't let ethnic studies, be a victim to the current political debate. We have to reinvest in it.
Okay. Ms. Henderson.
I have spoken out in opposition of AB 715. And I stand with the education, with my fellow educators that are in our position, even with the amendments. And I agree with Speaker Rendon. Last minute amendments don't necessarily make for um, imp- drastic improvements to the legislation. And I do support ethnic studies, and I believe that it should be taken back and reconsidered.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newman.
Let me agree both with Richard and with Nichelle. On the one hand, again, things happen real fast at the end of the session, but the final bill probably is as close to consensus you're going to find. But to Nichelle's point, there's a problem with legislating First Amendment issues, especially in this sort of clumsy way. And let me come back to something I think I touched on. This comes back to this broader necessity to better teach critical thinking. And one of the big flaws with the ethnic studies discussion is that we've lost sight of a different question, which is how do we give students in California the knowledge base and the tools to think critically about these very, very complicated, very fractious conversations? That should be as high a priority as any particular bill or discipline.
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit of my own history. My late husband, Mr. Kaplan, taught at U.S. history at a high school, and was, let's just say, he was just very pro ethnic studies for everyone, and all of the students benefited from a lot of critical thinking, a lot of hard conversations, and everybody thrived and nobody died. Okay, so moving on. Thank you all for your responses. We're going to do what we call targeted questions. Targeted sounds a little ominous, I know, but we're going to address questions to each one of you, kind of sort of a question in your wheelhouse, and we'll allow everyone else to respond briefly to your response. So the first question is addressed to Mr. Hoffman. I'm sorry. That was originally Andra. She's not here, so we will not do that. First question will go to Mr. Barrera. And the question is pretty simple. How would you help improve current...
Erin, can I break in a moment? Let me just clarify about our missing candidates. I think that the idea is that we will read the question that had been designed for the targeted candidate. And no problem. I didn't get a chance to explain this. Let me just explain it to the group because it's complicated in an experiment in forum efforts. We would love to see a little interaction without too much blood on the floor. So the idea is we designed some targeted questions which we would ask the specific candidate to answer more deeply with 3 minutes. And then the other people who are here can raise their hand. Up to 3 people can respond for 1 minute each. And 2 of these questions you will not therefore be able to respond to because we run out of time. Although now that we're down to 4 candidates, I'll let our moderator decide whether she wants to just give the opportunity to everyone or not. But that would mean that we had pre-randomized these questions. And the first randomized question was to Ms. Hoffman, who's not here. So I would request and explain that Erin, that she will read the question, but we won't get our deep answer and allow 1 minute responses. Does that work?
Yes, thanks for that. Sorry, thanks for that, Sarah. That's right. So in the case of the first question addressed to Ms. Hoffman, who's not here, it would be great if everyone could respond to it. And then the other question that Sarah explained will be addressed to one of you, and you will answer, 3-minute answer more deeply and
Clarify, it's 1 minute at this point.
That's correct. Well, 1 minute.
Thank you so much.
That response. You don't have to respond. It's not required. But if you would like to respond, then it's 1 minute for each response. So let's start with the first target question for Ms. Hoffman, which I would like you all to respond to. And that question is, how can the educational system protect and support children's health and well-being especially since it's being currently menaced by immigration raids, surging childhood illnesses, and diminishing vaccination rates. And any one of you can respond. If you can sort of, or I can just pick some. Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrera.
I'll jump in. So there's a lot of pieces to this. One is, of course, one of the most devastating impacts of the federal government, their HR 1 bill is the cuts to Medi-Cal, which directly impact our families and impact our ability to provide behavioral health services, on our campuses. We have a state initiative, the California Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, which is designed to access private health insurance to provide support, school-based support for students. It currently needs a lot of work. School districts are having a lot of difficulty accessing that funding. So one of the priorities, I think, at CDE is to work with Department of Healthcare Services and make that funding more accessible.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newman.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to do the raise hand function, so thank you. So to Richard's point, yes, agree there. But we have actually a very promising model that exists within the system. It's the community schools model, and we should build on it. It is a proven, successful model, and what it does is it better centers the school in the community and creates opportunities to house resources, make connectivities with families in that community. Secondly, I've been part of a bunch of conversations over the last couple of years about reforms and changes to the Mental Health Services Act. There is an immense amount of money that is being spent that for some reason does not include schools, and schools are the perfect nexus for delivering services, particularly behavioral health services. And it's in MHSA money where I think we can find the resources to cite behavioral health specialists, counselors at the schools, and not just help students, but families in those communities as well.
Great, thank you. Someone else?
I think Nichelle has her.
The idea of children being vaccinated is a personal choice. It's a parental choice, and so regardless of funding for health programs and resources available, if parents don't want their children to be vaccinated, that is a concern, and our school districts need to create plans around or just a policy across the state that addresses how children that are not vaccinated interact with other children and how they are in school, because to some degree it becomes a health issue. I believe in parent involvement and parent education. When parents are aware of the services and the resources that are available to them and their children, they're better able to make decisions that are in the best interest of their children, and also training teachers to understand how to speak with parents and help their kids to become better advocates for them. So it's more than just a funding issue.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Rendon.
Yeah, it's interesting that Josh and Richard both talked about some of the programs that we've passed in Sacramento or funded over in Sacramento over the past couple of years. And I think, Josh, Al, myself, we're all proud of those programs. To a large extent, what we see in so many aspects of California government is an inability to sort of administer these programs through the various agencies. You can look at, endless systems and programs that just aren't implemented correctly and accurately, and certainly with respect to equity. Ultimately, that's what this job comes down to. The job of Superintendent of Public Instruction, I really believe that the legislature has done a great job in terms of providing an administrative framework and the proper programs and services for our kids in the K-12 system. But now it's a matter of implementing them. It's a matter of holding school districts that don't implement what we have asked them to do, a matter of holding them accountable.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question is targeted. Mr. Barrera, this question is for you. How would you help improve current and former foster youth education and services?
So the as we know, foster youth are, sort of identified as one of the key groups of students under the local control funding formula that districts receive additional funding for, depending on the number of foster students that we have. I think we've got, some real issues in the system, and one of those is we continue the foster system continues to focus on taking students out of families rather than helping support families to stay together. And, I've worked with organizations that represent foster families in the community. And, obviously, our first responsibility in the school system is to protect our students. But I think we move too quickly often to simply remove students from any sense of, real community or family support. And the goal should be how do we work with families to make sure that the families can actually stay intact and that students, aren't just taken away into a system that unfortunately produces, negative results.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newman, your response.
Let me add to Richard's very good comments there. So we've actually been fairly successful the last several years. The number of children in the foster system has actually materially gone down. It's currently around 60,000. In a state of nearly 40 million people, we should be able to find the resources to properly assist those 60,000 students through an immensely challenging time. I served as a court-appointed special advocate for a number of years. It gave me direct insight into the foster system and also the educational system, the IEPs for foster kids. And we're simply not doing well enough. And it's a moral obligation to make sure that those resources are available and then no kid falls through the cracks. So not only should the educational system do better, there should be a whole host of resources that come from other entities, other agencies that support the holistic support of a foster kid. And to Richard's point, we need to decrease the number of placements. Every study shows that when kids are under duress, it's impossible to learn. And we need to recognize that.
Well, thank you. Thank you much. Ms. Henderson, you have your hand up. Yeah.
Well, as a former classroom teacher, I worked very closely with having students that were in foster care in my classrooms. And one of the challenges was they're not always in the same place throughout their education. And so they end up having a lot of gaps in their learning, a lot of mistrust of the system. And what I believe is when we focus on student success, we focus on the services and the supports that we can provide to those students and the people that are supporting them within the system. I'm currently a commissioner on the LA County Productivity Commission, Quality and Productivity Commission, and we work a lot with county departments like DCFS. And so being able to leverage those types of relationships across the state with various county entities is going to be really important in supporting those students and making sure that they're able to continue their education and be strong, educated adults.
Thank you. Mr. Rendon.
I'd like to start with making a very partisan statement in what I know is a nonpartisan office. The answers you've heard thus far are really what separates Democrats from Republicans. We have 3 responses so far that have focused on essentially looking at the root of the problem. For me, early childhood education, when I was running Head Start programs, oftentimes the kids would get the only medical screenings they would ever get in their lives would be through our services. The 2 nutritious meals that we provided them were the only nutritious meals they got throughout the day. It's those types of programs and services that we should be implementing and implementing effectively and across the board. When we talk about making sure, I think transitional kindergarten is a perfect place to do that. I think transitional kindergarten, you have a captive audience where you can begin to talk about these issues and screening for these issues. So I think that's an exciting opportunity for us.
Thank you, Mr. Rendon. Okay, the next question is for Ms. Henderson, will you lead the way to funding ethnic studies in all schools, guided by experts in the field to elevate the discussion beyond simple diversity? And what is the superintendent's role in overseeing curriculum for ethnic studies?
Great question. Yes, I will, because I am a huge proponent of ethnic studies. I've advocated for ethnic studies through my union, California Faculty Association, but also just as an educator. I believe that when, as Senator Newman mentioned, when students are educated, they're aware of both sides or all sides of an issue. They're able to make critical decisions of their own versus being provided with one side or a biased viewpoint. It's really important to me that ethnic studies be funded. We have now that K-12 is a high school graduation requirement, but it hasn't been funded. So until it's funded, we won't be able to really have ethnic studies programs unless schools districts are able to allocate some funding from other sources. So yes, I will support ethnic studies. And what was the last part of the question?
Oh, just what is the superintendent's role in overseeing curriculum, state superintendent?
The superintendent of public instruction oversees curriculum and instruction for public K-12 education across the state. That means that when laws or policy is set regarding instruction, the superintendent of public instruction is the person that oversees it with the local education agencies, local counties of county offices of education and school districts to make sure that curriculum is being implemented appropriately. So they should have some idea of writing curriculum, of implementing curriculum, not just setting policy and throwing money at a law or a policy to make sure that it's implemented. They're responsible for the actual implementation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone of you want to respond? Yes, Mr. Rendon, and then Mr. Newman.
Yeah, absolutely support ethnic studies. Support ethnic studies in the legislature. The bill, Jose Medina is a member of the assembly. It came out of our house. It took, from a legislative perspective, it took 2 goes. It took 4 years to get it done and to get it out, to get the governor's signature. I know for activists, it was a much longer journey than that. So I saw the various iterations of the policy and some of the potential stumbling blocks early on. I think Ms. Henderson's correct in terms of the SPI's role in making sure that it's implemented across the board. I think to a large extent, the job of SPI is a listening job and then sort of reacting to what people are saying at the local level. I think there are some school districts which are fundamentally object to the concept of ethnic studies. I think there are other districts where the problems are perhaps more nuanced and they want a certain amount of flexibility in terms of implementing the curriculum.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newman?
Let me just add kind of on a technical side. So as far as oversight of curriculum, Nichelle's absolutely right. As far as the development and implementation of curriculum, there's actually a body called the Instructional Quality Commission. It's an 18-member body that's largely appointed by the governor, with a couple of seats appointed by the legislature, that has the formal responsibility for developing and implementing curriculum. And I think over time, I think it's true to say that the legislature has pulled back on its responsibility to participate directly in these conversations. We've delegated that authority. That's one of the reasons why I think the conversation around ethnic studies has become so fraught. And so the SPI, to Nichelle's broader point, needs to be really involved in those conversations as far as articulating standards, identifying areas, and then forcing all the different participants to actually fully participate so that we get something that benefits California students.
Great, thank you. Mr. Barrera?
Yeah, I think what's really important that we keep in mind around ethnic studies is not just a curriculum. It's not just what we teach, it's how we teach, how we connect to students, how, again, to Nichelle's point, we bring out honest conversations about our history and recognize that young people are eager to understand how the context that they live affects their own families and affects their experience. And what that means is ethnic studies requires a lot of professional development, a lot of capacity building of our educators. And that's why we can't have this sort of stop and go aspect to funding. To build up an appropriate ethnic studies program requires districts to spend years developing the capacity of their educators. And again, in San Diego Unified, we continue to invest in it despite the lack of funding from the state.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Next question is for Mr. Rendon. What is the role of the SSPI in early childhood education?
Thank you. The role of SSPI the early childhood education programs that the state funds and operates goes through the CDE, California Department of Education, and then through the CDD, the Child Development Division, both of which are under the jurisdiction of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. In terms of actual implementation of the programs, there's a little more, I should say much more, authority for the SSPI than there is through K through 12 education, which to a large extent are handled at the local level. And for me, that's the exciting point. That's the exciting part of this job, is to sink my teeth into programs that I administered for 20 years. I also think what's particularly relevant about this role right now, and it hurts me to say it, but I think that Head Start will probably be next on the chopping block. And the early childhood education programs funded by the state of California, to a large extent, could be the only early childhood education programs available to children in this state. That is a horrifying future. It's a horrifying future for low-income families. It's a horrifying future for the state. And that's why we need to make sure that these programs are implemented effectively and across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Newman.
Let me agree 100% with Anthony. And let me also point out something I've always thought is kind of weird. I guess two things. One is kindergarten, for some reason, is not mandatory in California. And every year we have a bill, and every year that bill gets stymied because of the cost of implementing mandatory attendance for 5-year-olds, which makes no sense when you consider that we've rolled out universal TK. Secondly, and I hope this isn't controversial, but it's just an observation, Prop 98 is a central feature of California's governance and finance. And what it says is 40% of general fund monies will be spent on education. Prop 98 does not include 0 through 4. Prop 98 includes now TK through 12. And for whatever reason, there's no similar funding source for early childhood education other than the First Buy program, which is tobacco tax money, which we should want to go away. And so we need to really think, to Anthony's point, if the federal monies go away, if the challenges continue to grow for California parents, how do we invest in those first 4 years? Because that's arguably where you're going to get the best return on that investment.
Great point. Thank you. Mr. Barrera?
So to build on Josh's point, the notion that families with students under the age of 4 have no access to affordable, high quality early childhood education in their own neighborhoods is a crime. And when we talk about, I think people have mentioned, we're the 4th largest economy in the world, and yet we put families in this position. We should, and I think somebody commented, New Mexico has created the first model. The goal needs to be free, accessible, high quality early childhood education provided by professional early childhood educators who can support their own families. And as superintendent, I will lead an effort to build a coalition to create the funding to make that happen.
Great, thanks. Ms. Henderson.
I started my career in education as a parent volunteer when my oldest son, who's now 34, started an SRLDP program. It's a reading literacy program, pre-K, in LAUSD. And I I highly speak for programs such as that because my then 3-year, 9-month-old child gained a love of reading and just learning from that program. And as we talk about pre-K and TK, I have a granddaughter that just finished TK and is now in kindergarten. Those early literacy programs with across the content areas are so vital. And I will definitely fight for programs that make sure that our students have a great start.
Great, thank you. The next question is addressed to Mr. Newman. Can the elected can the elected SSPI and appointed Board of Education be encouraged to interact more effectively?
They should be. They should be. So I wrote an op-ed about 3-4 months ago, and I think you can make an interesting and a compelling argument for this position for which I am running, for which we're all running, being not an elected position, but an appointed position, a Secretary of Education position, a la 40 other states. That would do a bunch of things, including better align the efforts of the superintendent, but with the governor, and hold, let folks hold him or her more accountable. There's an interesting feature of state level education governance. So Richard's a trustee in San Diego, and so the trustees all get elected. Then they hire the superintendent, and they manage the superintendent. That superintendent is accountable to those 5 trustees. It's kind of upside down in California, right? Where the governor appoints the members of the State Board of Education, then we elect a superintendent. So that in some ways explains why there isn't a better connection, why there isn't better collaboration between those two entities. And we should think about, how to address that. Now, part of that is simply who's the superintendent, how well can they navigate that space? But structurally, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And we've done some other things, since I have a couple of minutes, over the last bunch of years. We've delegated other responsibilities that were historically assigned to the superintendent to other entities, right? So teacher credentialing, school allocations board, the Instructional Quality Commission, as I mentioned. And so, what you're left with is a position that's largely a bully pulpit position that should have more authority, that should have more leverage when it comes to some of these important considerations.
Great, thank you. Mr. Rendon?
Thank you. First of all, to answer the specific question, absolutely, the board and the SSBI should work more closely together. With respect to Josh's point, this is one area where I disagree strongly with my good friend Josh Newman. Look, I would not have been happy with the superintendent that Arnold Schwarzenegger would have appointed. I would have not been happy with the superintendent that Pete Wilson had appointed. I would not have been happy with the superintendent that George Deukmejian appointed. Honestly, when I was Speaker and Jerry Brown was governor, our views on education were very different as well. I probably wouldn't have liked the superintendent that he would have appointed either. I think this has to be an elected position at a time when democracy is being threatened in the United States, when it's being threatened in Europe, when it's being threatened in Latin America, to have an executive branch that's more empowered, I think, is antithetical to really where we need to go. And within the context of California, what's so interesting about us is the legacy of the progressive movement, and this whole idea of empowering voters and giving them a say.
Thank you for that. Ms. Henderson, you had your hand up.
I agree wholeheartedly with Speaker Rendon. This position should not be an appointed position, because this position should be accountable to the public, to the voters of the state of California, to educators, to parents, to students. And if it is an appointed position, they will not be, that person will be beholden to the governor, and that level of accountability will be diminished.
Okay, thank you. Great. And Mr. Barrera?
Yeah, so first of all, I think right now, currently, CDE and the State Board of Education are actually working pretty well together. I think we worked together to create the literacy content blocks that just went out to the field. But I agree with Anthony and Nichelle on this, and respectfully disagree with Josh. You can't have, in California, we simply can't have a system where the interests of public education can be subjugated to a governor who might have competing priorities. And in fact, what I think should be happening is the CDE, the state superintendent, should be more empowered. For instance, the state superintendent should be able to pull together a conversation with educators that provides the first draft of the education budget every year. The governor shouldn't be providing the first draft of the education budget. That should be coming up from our education stakeholders. And I think if we did that, I think we'd see education budgets that are actually more consistent with the priorities of local school districts.
You do have 54 seconds, Josh.
Okay, I appreciate it. Since we're debating here. So let me say, we're in a kind of worst of both worlds situation. So I don't disagree with some of those critiques. But the fact of the matter is that within all of these conversations and decisions on education, the governor's office has the vast majority of leverage as it stands. And so we should do one of two things, to their point. We should either reinvest in the superintendent, more authority, particularly to Rich's point, around budgeting and program definition, or go the other way. But as it stands right now, we have an SPI position that it's actually weaker than people think. And I think my takeaway is that actually gives more space to other electeds not to take full responsibility for education.
Okay, thank you. And the last question in this first set of targeted questions is for Mr. Muratsuchi. He's not here, so I'll read the question and then get your responses. What's your vision for how California schools should be addressing climate crisis in the classroom and in our facilities? Would someone like to start? Yes, Mr. Newman. And then
I'll start. I'll be brief. So, I'm proud to be a principal co-author with Assemblymember Muratsuchi for Prop 2, which passed in November, which provides $8.5 billion for K-12, $1.5 billion for CCCs, community colleges, for desperately needed improvements. The need to address environmental issues within that is deliberately centered in that legislation, provides not only funds, but technical support to upgrade facilities to take into account climate. More broadly, we should be teaching climate science in ways that give students full appreciation for the challenges that we face, and then points them in the direction to participate fully in the transition to a green economy in California.
Great, thank you. I think Ms. Henderson, you had your hand up.
Yeah, in LACCD, we have a climate center at West LA College that Assemblymember Isaac Bryan helped fund. But I believe very strongly that we should have climate science taught in our K through 12 classrooms, because our students in K-12 right now will be working in these green and blue jobs of the future. And they need to be not only prepared for current jobs, but we need to be imagining what those jobs of the future will look like. So they will be working in jobs that have not been created yet. And so it creates a pathway to economic opportunity, but also, an opportunity for them to think about their place in the world and how they will make changes that will affect them and the future generations. So we should definitely be focused on climate change and making sure that we're starting to look at climate change in terms of our buildings and how we do LEED certification and, all of that good stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Rendon.
Ultimately, the purpose of our educational system is really to prepare children for adulthood. And we know that climate change is going to endanger and jeopardize the extent to which our kids are going to have adult lives that are the way we want them to be. I think we need to prepare in two different ways. First of all, there's been an attack on science itself by the Trump administration and by the radical right. And in California, we need to stand apart from that. We need to teach climate science, and we need to do it at an early age. I'm really heartened by some of the lessons I've already seen my 6-year-old daughter get about the environment. And I think we need to start early and make sure that those ideas percolate throughout a child's life. But to Ms. Henderson's point, yeah, we absolutely have to make sure that our school facilities themselves, our school facilities are climate ready, in the same way that we passed a resource bond to make sure that our parks have proper shading and the right trees. We need to make sure our schools do the same, and we need to make sure that those are all built by union jobs with our brothers and sisters from the trades.
Thank you. Mr. Barrera?
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's response to this. So, our commitment in San Diego Unified, in our bond program, which again is now $11.5 billion, we will be carbon neutral as a district within a few years. And that is because the local voters invested in our facilities and have allowed us to invest in solar and, a variety of energy conservation programs where we passed a resolution to go all electric moving forward. Districts up and down the state can do that. One of the roles that CDE can provide that I think we can do a lot more of is help local districts build their capacity to put together bond programs that we can go out to the voters and be successful. Because again, Prop 2 is great, but it's just a drop in the bucket in terms of the needs that are out there across the state.
Great, thank you all. Okay, next set of these targeted questions. We'll start with Ms. Henderson. Educators are experiencing discouraging working conditions. What can be done to recruit and retain educators? And also, how can we support academic freedom?
Well, it's difficult to recruit teachers when teacher salary is not equitable. Different districts can pay their teachers different salaries based off of their perceived budgets. Working in a teacher credentialing program, I work with Newman pre-service teachers working towards their multiple subjects teaching credentials. And so they're going to be TK through sixth grade teachers. And the hoops that they have to jump through to become teachers, the challenges of not being supported. Right now, the average new teacher is leaving the profession within 3 to 5 years versus 7 to 10. Veteran teachers are leaving the profession. They're not open a lot of the times to even support newer teachers because they're feeling overwhelmed themselves. So it's a system where we have to change the way that we and what we offer teachers in order to be successful, in order to get them to want to become teachers. We have a lot of great people that would be outstanding teachers that are not in the profession because they're not able to pass a ridiculous assessment or or just can't afford to not be employed while they're working towards their teaching credential. Freedom of speech. I agree with freedom of speech and academic freedom. What I am concerned about is how we use academic freedom in the classroom. Academic freedom does not mean you impart your opinion or your bias into the implementation of instruction. It means that you teach and present all sides of an issue whenever it is being presented, and you leave your personal thoughts and to the side, and you allow the students to come up with their own ideologies and ideas about the issue. And as long as we can protect that, make sure that the implementation of instruction is not biased, academic freedom becomes a moot point, because the idea is not you're a teacher not coming into the classroom bringing your own curriculum. You're teaching a curriculum, and it's the way that you should be teaching that curriculum.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rendon.
In order to support teachers need to be paid more. It's that simple. We have seen in a lot of the income qualifying programs that the CDD unit of the CDE funds, we have a lot of teachers who are dangerously close to qualifying for the same income qualifying programs that they're responsible for administering. That is unbelievable. And you have these same teachers who are using their own funds to buy supplies because our schools are underfunded. We've looked at additional funding revenues for other parts of our state governance. We need to make sure that our K through 12 schools and our early childhood education schools have additional revenue as well. Prop 98 was never supposed to be a ceiling. It was always meant to be the floor. It was always meant to be the base funding for our K through 12 schools. And I think to a large extent, the sort of culture of budgeting has reversed that.
Okay, thank you. I can attest to the fact that teachers spend their money on supplies. My husband certainly did all the time. Mr. Newman.
So, you know, we should remember, Anthony's absolutely right. Prop 98 was not supposed to be the ceiling. And you know, legislature and others have got to be more active and responsible for addressing these problems. 2 years ago, I held a hearing about the state of the educator workforce in California, and we heard two alarming things. One, we're losing teachers too soon. Lots of reasons for that. But we're also having a lot of trouble recruiting the new generation of candidates. And to Nichelle's point, one of the hoops that you referred to is this, you know, the assessment, the teacher performance assessment, which ostensibly is supposed to validate, you know, the quality and training of a candidate, but it's had the unintended effect of dissuading a lot of people from continuing their progress through the teaching ranks. And ironically, it's dissuading exactly the kinds of prospective teachers that we most desperately need across state, teachers who reflect the makeup of their classes. All the research shows that if you have teachers that are the same, from the same places as their students will thrive. We need to make sure that we address that.
Great. Mr. Barrera?
Yeah, two quick points. So on the point of teachers needing to be paid more, teachers and classified employees, absolutely, again, go back to this, you know, basic point. California is the fourth largest economy in the world. We should be paying our teachers more, and we should be providing fully paid family health benefits for all of our school employees. And by the way, school districts, to Nichelle's point, do have choices that they can make. So we have school districts that frankly put so much money away into reserves or into outside consultants or, you know, different expenses, money that could be invested directly in educators. We've invested that money in educators in San Diego, and that's why we've got the best results in the state. Number two, there are 75,000 acres of property that school districts own up and down the state that could be developed into affordable housing for educators. We could produce 2 to 3 million units of educator workforce housing. And that is something that I will help lead at the Department of Education as state superintendent.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question is directed to Mr. Rendon. With Medicaid and federal education dollars in jeopardy, even while these fungible resources support education system-wide, what is your plan to ensure that the needs of the 16 categories of exceptional students can be met?
Again, we need to make sure we increase revenue, particularly at this time. We are seeing a time when it's difficult to determine how much funding will be cut from the federal government level, because the way the interaction between the state and the federal government works is the money is allocated between 5 and 20 year increments. So some of the cuts may not be might not last that long, depending on whether we gain control of the White House or Congress. But there, to your point, there will be significant cuts to virtually all of our programs because of the federal government. We're also facing a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit in the state. Again, that's a little difficult to determine how big it'll be, but we need additional revenue. We need stable revenue. We hear from business leaders all the time. We hear business leaders all the time talking about the need to plan for their businesses for the future. School districts and schools need to do the same. We need to be able to look at our class of kindergartners and know how many of them are going to be in high school and the funds are going to be necessary. And we're with a very unstable tax system and with not enough revenue, we run the risk of not being able to plan accurately.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, Mr. Barrera.
So quite frankly, this is why we need Prop 50. This is why we need a different Congress. That, as we know, the federal government for 50 years has had the responsibility to fund 40% of special education around the country. It's never met that responsibility. Currently, it's at about 7%. That means school districts are picking up the tab, and it means our students and our educators don't have the support that they need. Meanwhile, this Congress has made a decision to spend 4 times the amount it's currently spending on special education in its private school voucher giveaway. and to spend 10 times the amount it's currently spending on special education to hire more immigration agents and to create more prison camps to put our immigrant families. So we need to pass Prop 50. We need a different Congress. And that's something that all of us need to be working on right now, because we can't simply allow this federal government to continue with the priorities that it's demonstrating.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Newman.
Let me just add in and join with Richard. Remember, California contributes far more to the federal budget, federal government than we get back. And we are in the crosshairs of the Trump administration. 5 more Congress people's got to help, right? So go Prop 50.
Okay, great. All right, next question is directed to Mr. Newman. How can the state superintendent of public instruction, the SSPI, support schools locally in protecting student rights, including trans girls in sports, LGBTQ visibility and representation, and free and uncensored libraries, and equity of resources?
So we've all made the same point. Every school, every student deserves the exact same level of support and resources, but also the same level of accountability. And there have been real problems over the last several years around the uniform complaint process. CDE has to take a much more active and forceful role in pursuing and addressing complaints across all of these different levels. And so as superintendent, I will make sure that is an area of real emphasis within CDE to streamline the complaint process, to make sure that every complaint is fully heard and fully resolved, and that there's transparency throughout. And where county boards are, not fast enough to respond or act in interests that run counter to students or schools' interests, we need a really aggressive response to that. And the SPI, working with the AG, should make sure that the full force of the law is applied so that every California student gets full protection under the law and all the resources they deserve.
Okay, thank you. Any one of you want to respond? Oh, okay. I think technically Ms. Henderson was first, and then we'll have Mr. Barrera next.
I want to agree with Senator Newman. I think, we're all in the business as educators of making sure that all students have an opportunity to learn and to thrive. And we have to make sure that we protect all of our students in the ways in which they need protection and fight for our students. In LACCD, we have an LGBT student bill of rights because we have an openly gay board member that I work with very closely to make sure that as we're thinking about how we educate people, how we make them feel safe, and how we make sure that we are intentional about the ways that we provide access for them to access not just their education, but supports. And so, it's not an issue of trans versus not, it's an issue of how we protect our students and how we make sure that all students have an opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Barrera.
So I've been actually very proud of the response that we've seen from Superintendent Thurmond to this assault from the Trump administration on our LGBTQ students. Remember, at the core of what the Trump administration is trying to do is it's trying to basically threaten us and say that unless we discriminate against our LGBTQ students, our immigrant students, and others, we're going to take your funding away. So it's trying to force California away from its values. We have in California, students can participate in sports based on their gender identity. That's our law. And Superintendent Thurmond has stood up for that and pushed back at the Trump administration. So we right now are in a situation where our first, a priority has to be to protect all of our students, particularly those that are being threatened by people who would exploit young people for political gains.
Oh, good timing. Okay, thank you. Exact. Is that everyone? Any other? Mr. Rendon.
Yeah, I mean, particularly with respect to transgender students, I mean, we protect them with dignity by teaching dignity to, the entire class and all of our students. And these are young people trying to understand themselves as adults. We need to make sure there's a safe place and provide a constitutionally guaranteed education that they deserve. We passed AB 1955. Josh and I were in the legislature when that happened, as was Al. We passed that in 2024. It's called the Safety Act, and it supports academic futures and educators for all kids. Law also bans school policies that compel teachers to inform parents if a student requests to be identified by a different gender or uses different gender pronouns at school. And again, when Richard talks about what the Trump administration is trying to stop, this is precisely the type of thing that they're trying to deal with. I'm going to say in closing on this question, I hope I'm elected SSPI. If I'm not, I hope it's one of these other folks, because I know there's another candidate in this race who's not involved in this debate today, in this forum today, who is fundamentally opposed to everything that each of us has said thus far.
Thank you. All right. And this last question is addressed to Mr. Barrera. How do you propose to address the issue of declining enrollment? Is the effect of declining enrollment mitigated by the campaign to repurpose facilities as workforce housing?
So declining enrollment is largely driven by the lack of affordable housing. I mean, that's really, I mean, there's issues, but it really comes down to it. And so we actually see, there was a study by Public Policy Institute a few years ago that shows in the high cost areas of California, that's where we see the steepest decline in enrollment. There are actually areas of California where we're seeing increased enrollment, and that tends to be in the lower cost areas. What do we do? So we can, as an education system, sit back and throw our hands up in the air and say, the issue that is impacting us almost, maybe as much as anything else, which is declining enrollment and the inability to recruit and retain educators that's driven by the lack of affordable housing, we can simply sit back and say that's somebody else's job to do something about that. Instead, we do have the ability, and we just talked about this study from Berkeley and UCLA a couple of years ago that identifies school districts on our own property. We have the ability to build 2.5 to 3 million units of affordable housing, not only for our educators, but for our families as well. We can, and we can also work with other public agencies. So in San Diego, our district has formed a regional housing finance authority with the community college district, where we're looking at the properties that, both districts own. And our intention is to work with other public agencies to identify public property that can be developed into housing for our educators and our families. We simply have to jump into this with both feet and say the solution to providing affordable housing, we have an opportunity to play a big role in that. Part of that, again, comes back to school districts can pass bond measures with a 55% threshold that no other, public agencies have the ability to meet. And in our case, we built into our last bond measure $200 million for the construction of affordable housing on district property. We can do more as school districts. It is something that school districts are very interested in starting to be part of. Part of it is school districts get overwhelmed and they say, "Oh my God, we don't know anything about housing. We're our job is to do education." But we can provide help to school districts. And part of that is an effort that we've been pursuing at CDE to create a fund statewide that school districts can access to get some professional help to understand the properties that they have that they could go out and develop. San Diego Unified, we just issued an RFP for 1,500 units on 5 of our properties. We're leading the way, and we can do more of this around the state.
Great, thank you. Any of you want to weigh in or respond?
Just, I guess, real quickly, Rich is right. On the one hand, this is a promising space to all of his points. Development of housing on school properties is exempt from CEQA, which should make a big difference in fast tracking those kinds of things. But to this other point, as they say, demographics is destiny, and where medium home prices have been increasing in parts of the state, that freezes out the people of sort of student child age, and so they're moving to other parts of the state where there simply isn't the infrastructure for quality education. So that's something that SPI is going to have to lead on, but the whole state's going to have to try and figure out where do we put money? How do we cite schools in ways that actually serve where children live and where families need it most?
Great. Mr. Rendon?
Richard's right. Josh is right. Workforce housing is incredibly important. We've made efforts in Sacramento in the last few years, whether it was ADAs or golf courses, opportunities to provide for additional housing. My daughter attends a public school. She started kindergarten a couple of weeks ago. You see this giant yard, largely unused out there, and you start to think about these things. In every community, you have those types of facilities. These are in the actual community. This is exactly the type of place we should be building. And when we talked earlier about teacher pay and those types of things, this is all part of that. It should be part of an overall teacher compensation package.
Great, thanks. Okay. Now we're going to move. We have 15 minutes left. We're
I
going
think
to.
we have Nichelle. I wanted a response. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Excuse me, Ms. Henderson.
No worries. I just wanted to say, when I was a classroom teacher in the Compton Unified School District, they were just ending a program where they help new teachers or teachers new to the district purchase homes in the community where they were working. And so we had I worked with a number of teachers that had participated in this program where the district helped them to put down the down payment for their home. And that is a pathway to supporting teachers, not just, building apartments. People want to be homeowners. The other concern that we have in our communities is that our children, our students, their parents are not, or their families are not able to pay rent. And these kids are becoming homeless, but they still need to go to school. So we're thinking about workforce housing, but we also need to think about housing affordability and how we continue to educate these children, even when, they literally have no place to live. And that moves beyond a policy issue or what have you. It's a community issue.
Yeah, well said. Well, getting a down payment now for any house in Southern California is a lot more than it used to be. Okay, we're going to move to kind of where we started out with kind of big picture questions that I want to address to all of you. A couple of minutes each response. And the first one is, how do you see the legacies of segregation, integration, which I don't think really happened, and resegregation affecting current student outcomes? How will your leadership address these systemic inequities? Do you have any innovative strategies towards redress? So whoever wants to start.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. How do you see the legacies of segregation, integration, and resegregation affecting current student outcomes? How will your leadership address these systemic inequities?
I guess I'll start. I mean, there is no question from the data that we're seeing broadly a trend toward resegregation and toward stratification of wealthy districts and really, sort of pressure at really challenged districts. And so, it's everybody here has talked about it. It's a fundamental question that every school needs the resources that it need, that are required to elevate student achievement, student performance. The local control funding formula, which was passed in 2013, actually, aspires to do that. But it's only one part of what has to be a larger solution. On the other side, the sort of pressures that we've seen arise in sort of the charters versus publics debate, that is in some ways a response and a reasonable response by parents in these areas that are not getting what they regard as good value for their tax dollar for their children. And we need to recognize that. And so I think among the things that need doing is we need to revisit this conversation around the charter school movement and get back to the original concept, which was charter schools as a laboratory for experimentation, innovation, from which we can learn good lessons to deploy to benefit students across the system. And if we did that better, especially in challenged communities, we would see a reinvestment in the idea of public education. And I think that is an important role of the superintendent to provide that leadership, but also identify opportunities to pilot programs, to test new models, to then build off of them to deliver those benefits to all school districts across the state, especially those that need it the most.
Great, thank you. Well said. Someone else. Mr. Rendon and then Mrs. Henderson.
No, I think Ms. Henderson had her hand up first. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right, it's hard for you to see. I know, that's all.
Yeah, my hand is brown. In a nutshell, segregation, integration, resegregation, none of those Asians benefit students of color. And, we've dealt with redlining, we've dealt with, but the base issue is that schools are not funded in an equitable manner. We should not be funding our schools based off of neighborhood or zip code or the color of the students. We should be funding our schools based off of need and making sure that there is a level playing field for all students and schools in terms of funding and access to opportunities. There was a time that we had that Black students had to go to Black schools and be taught by Black teachers, and we had a time where we had inventors and scientists, and we had doctors and attorneys and folks earning PhDs at record levels. And now we've been integrated, and that is not the case. This system was not designed for all students to be successful. It was designed for students to fall through the crack because they were not intended to be part of this system and experience any level of success or excellence. And so it is incumbent upon not just the superintendent, but all of us to reimagine a system of education where all students are able to thrive, not just survive, and that we do not allow any student to fall through the cracks.
Wonderful, thank you. I apologize. Answers are randomized. So next will be Mr. Rendon responding to this.
Sure. Same question, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But to your, I caught when you were asking the question, Erin. You said segregation or desegregation never really happened, and you're absolutely right. If you look at most urban studies of the 60s and 70s, that's the case. It really didn't happen. Right now, what's interesting in the urbanism space is some of our most diverse communities are actually in the exurbs. They're actually in far away places beyond the suburbs. And those are places that are incredibly diverse, but often don't have the resources that a lot of other school districts have, particularly suburban school districts. We have seen in a lot of middle class and upper middle class communities the development of these great educational foundations, which are fantastic and help to fund a lot of the ancillary programs that the districts aren't able to fund themselves. But we know who gets left out, and I think Ms. Henderson was talking about those communities as well. It's our Black families, it's our brown communities who statistically their families don't have the resources. And if you look at, there's a great study in EdVoice about the discrepancy between education foundations and, no surprise, high income areas, middle class income areas versus low income class areas. So the answer, again, it's a sort of a refrain, it's a drumbeat, is to make sure local control funding was the start for funding equity. But we need to make sure that there are other efforts. We need to make sure that there's additional revenue as well for our public schools.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Barrera.
So the subdistrict that I represent in San Diego is largely working class communities, heavily immigrant communities, schools with high, percentages of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, high percentages of English learners. And one of the things that we've seen over decades is the attempts to expand choice. And I believe in school choice. I think, families should have a full range of choices. But what they've tended to do is de-emphasize the idea that the neighborhood school should provide a quality choice. So no family should be forced to choose between a quality education for their kids and needing to put their kid on a bus to go to the other side of town. And a lot of what we see in terms of segregation is actually segregation in neighborhood schools where the most engaged parents are the ones who are exercising choice, and maybe, to Josh's point, going to a charter school or maybe going to a different school. So it comes back to, Nichelle's point. We have to have the investment available in our neighborhood schools, and we need to prioritize that investment for our neighborhood schools. Again, I go back to my point about the students from Logan Memorial who performed yesterday. When we put a $200 million investment into a community like Logan Heights, suddenly that neighborhood school is attracting a lot more attention from neighborhood parents who are believing that's a good choice for my kids. So it's investment in neighborhood schools so that they can become a high quality choice for all of our parents that I think needs to be our fundamental focus.
Great. Thank you. And Mr. Newman.
I thought I would think I responded first, didn't I?
Sorry.
I'll go again. Let's go. No, I'm fine. Keep going.
I had a senior moment. Sorry.
And I had a 7th grade moment where I thought, oh, I'm being called in class. I'm not prepared. So go ahead.
Thank you. We have one final question for discussion, and can I ask you to stay y'all stay a little bit longer, a few minutes over, to so we can just wrap this up.
Sure.
Okay, it won't be long. Okay, great. Related to the first question, and some of you touched on it already, is what's your perspective on school quote unquote choice, i.e., where do you stand on charters, school vouchers, and/or tax credit programs? And the first respondent will be Mr. Barrera.
Yeah, so there's different elements to what you just talked about. So the notion that we're going to give tax credits to families that can already afford private schools, that is the Republican agenda. That's the privatization agenda, and we need to be clear that that's what they're trying to do, and we need to fight back against that. Now, within the public school system, I believe that there should be a variety of choices. Families, students have different interests. So we might have, schools that focus on performing arts or schools that focus on, science and particular types of career preparation. And that's great. A robust public school system should have all of those choices. But again, let's get back to this fundamental question. Do I believe as a parent that if I walk my student a couple of blocks down the street to the neighborhood school, that that's a quality choice? And in order to make sure that that school becomes a quality choice, again, we as an entire state, we need to come together and recognize that when we're the 4th largest economy in the world, and Erin, this goes to your point about the sort of disparities in wealth, if we're not investing that wealth back into our public school system, including into our neighborhood schools, then we are fundamentally shutting out a whole generation of kids from being able to contribute and create, the next, great California. So we need to come together and invest back. And again, local school boards have decisions to make about where they are going to prioritize their funds. So San Diego is a city that has often been segregated north versus south. We've made a decision as a full school board that our first priority is going to be to invest in our neighborhood schools, and that's why we're seeing results.
Great. Next response, Ms. Henderson.
Wow. I think parents should always have an option. But if we properly fund our public schools, the option will be our neighborhood public schools. I am not against charter schools. The problem that I have with charter schools, because we have independent and public, independent charter schools manage themselves. They don't infringe on the local public school. The challenge that I have with many public charters is that they sap resources from our local public schools that are already running in a deficit in terms of funding, and meaning that they cohabitate and they don't bring resources to the table, and that doesn't benefit our students. They also seek to recruit our brightest from that school site, which forces that school into academic decline. It makes it even less palatable for a parent to want to send their child to our neighborhood school. So school's choice is great, but I do not believe that public funds should be utilized to to for private education. You know, it's a private matter. You use your private funds for your child to go there. I have two siblings who attended public school. I went to private school. For the majority of my education, my children attended public school. It was a choice for my parents. But I do believe that if we better fund our public schools and better support our public school teachers, we will see an increase in attendance and engagement and participation.
Okay, great. Well said. Very well said. Next, Mr. Newman.
Yeah, so I agree. I think we all agree. So no on vouchers. I actually had a Zoom call yesterday with a county supervisor from Shasta County, part of the red part of the state. That's where he started. He said, "How do you feel about vouchers?" And I told him I'm not cool with it. And he made the argument like, well, if my tax dollars aren't supporting education that I like, why can't I spend them elsewhere? The best analogy I could think of was like you might want to hire private additional protection for your fire protection in your house. That doesn't mean you can stop paying your taxes to fund the fire department. And so that kind of meme, especially at the federal level with the recent public support vouchers, is really dangerous. And we should push back hard. Public education is a shared public good. It's also highly leveraged, but it only works if it has the full advantage of full funding and full support. I actually, as far as the charters go, as I mentioned earlier, and I think we all agree, there's a role for charters. They were never intended to create a parallel system that would compete with and dilute the public education system. They were always intended as a laboratory to figure out ways to improve the public education system. So I actually have supported legislation, actually authored legislation around something called District of Choice. And what District of Choice does is a public school district can identify itself as a school choice district, and then they are obligated to take anybody from a neighboring district, irrespective of income class, IEP, et cetera, into their school because that's one of the provisions. We've seen not only good success with schools that have adopted the District of Choice, where they've got specialized curricula like IB curricula, but they're doing well. But that has actually improved the performance of neighboring school districts by dint of the competition that comes with it. So all of this is necessary, but the one thing we need to insist on is that we invest in education and educate Californians that this is a shared resource. Even if you don't have kids, you have a stake in public education in California.
Well said. Thank you for pointing that out. And Mr. Rendon.
I don't want to repeat a lot of what's been said. I'm fundamentally opposed to vouchers, fundamentally opposed to using public funds to support private education. Privatization efforts should be rejected. They're coming. They're coming from the federal government level. We know that's a huge priority of the Trump administration. We need to make sure we fight against that. In general, I think a personal sort of narrative is the best way of kind of addressing the question of schools and school choice. My daughter attends public school in our community, ABC Unified School District, great school district that we're very proud of. When it was time to enroll her in kindergarten, we took a tour of about 4 or 5 different schools. One had a STEM curriculum, one had an arts curriculum. The school we ultimately chose was one that didn't have a specific curriculum, but to Richard's point, because it was a good school, because it was a quality school, that sort of emphasis didn't matter. She's in a great learning place. The kids who are in the STEM school are in a great learning place that's more suited for them. The kids that are in the art school are in a great place that's suited for them. But ultimately, to Richard's point, I think to Josh's, to everybody's point, ultimately it comes down to making sure that our community schools, that it starts there, that those are well funded and provide a quality education.
Wonderful. I'm going to circle back to the targeted questions that we were doing earlier. I wanted to raise one, put out one that was meant for Ms. Hoffman. She's not here, but I would love for you to respond to this, briefly. And that is, what does the 21st century classroom mean to you? Is it technology and digitization and electronics? I was going to say AI, but anyway. Does it involve partnership with trade unions, nonprofits, or businesses? How should the classroom of today differ from the classroom of the past? I saw Mr. Rendon's hand first. Like Jeopardy. Who's touched the buzzer?
He's winning.
I think it's all. I think it's all of those things, Erin, and it really is. I think the extent to which we're raising, we're educating well-rounded kids is the extent to which we have a well-rounded education curriculum. At the same time, what we need to keep in mind is that relationship between teachers and their students is sacred. AI can never replace that, and we need to make sure that our teachers are being compensated fairly, that they're treated with dignity to reflect that. And I think another thing that's very important to this race and to our future in general. I've been in a lot of different endorsement interviews, and people talk about the future. What's the future going to look like? And I think what we need to keep remembering is that we determine that. Ultimately, within the context of a democracy, the role of AI, the role of, whether or not we accept or reject science and the Enlightenment, that's ultimately up to us. So the construction, the idea of a curricular construction of the way schools look, the way schools act, the way schools interact with students and with the community, the intersection between housing and schools. Those are decisions that ultimately we make. And I think that's why these forums are so important. And participatory democracy itself is really central to having an educational system that's just for all.
Great, thank you. I'm trying to go in the order of raised hands. I think Ms. Henderson, you were next.
Yes. So I work in the teacher credentialing program. I've done this for now over a decade. 21st century education means respecting diversity of people, diversity of thought. It means ensuring access, not just access to what we know and feel comfortable with, but making sure that students are prepared for a future that we have yet to truly imagine. It's it's encouraging students to think critically about the world and their place in this world. It's providing academic supports. It is providing, it's making sure that our teachers have the support and the training that they need to keep up with the changing needs of our students. As Speaker Rendon stated, AI is here, it's been here, it's not going away. In education, we need to determine how we find a way to integrate it into the way that we teach and the way the students learn. We need to make sure that our students understand that there are various pathways to getting to, their academic goals or their economic goals, and making sure that we as educators provide those pathways that are viable and sustainable for them to see themselves in various positions, bringing labor in, community, business, and offering opportunities, mentorships, apprenticeships. So the idea is to center student success in all aspects of their lives.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Mr. Barrera, and then Mr. Newman.
Yeah, so let me I'll give you a specific example and then, talk a little bit more broadly. So my son went to a high school, a district-run high school that was actually on a community college campus. And the students went to school 3 days a week, started taking community college courses in 11th grade. But then the other 2 days, they were out doing an internship. And, my son still, he works in the field that he did his internship, starting in 9th grade. We had a student at that school that when he came in 9th grade, the counselor sort of sat down, what are you good at? What do you like? What are you interested in? And he said, well, I like to draw and I'm good at math. He had never heard of architecture. He did his internship at an architecture firm, for 4 years and is now a professional architect. So we do have opportunities and examples where we are already reimagining, what the future education experience should look like. And we need to catch up because it's just not right that, the majority of our students are still sitting in class, in rows of desks, six periods a day, in an experience that looked a lot like it did for us. The other point more broadly is I chair a working group at the California Department of Education around reducing chronic absenteeism. And we just produce new guidance for schools and districts and county offices of education. And what we emphasize is, rather than focus on chasing a student down once they're already chronically absent, how do you create the conditions that make a student want to be in school in the first place? And that's all about student connectedness. Are there adults that the student feels that they're in a relationship with? Does the student feel safe and healthy? And are we connecting with the families? And when we do those things, then we are actually creating a system. AI tools like that, they will come and go. The question is, do our students feel like people care about them and that they can make a contribution out to the rest of the world? That's what we want to see in the future.
Great, thank you. And you're reminding me that the 21st century is 25% over already. Thank you. And Mr. Newman.
Right. So let me build on, I think Richard's point out something important, which, the world's changing fast. We're working within a model that is really old, right? And it's based on a world that's largely disappeared, the sort of post-industrial revolution in America, where school was, kind of a factory to pump out workers for the, for the industrial economy. And all that is changing. And so, we have this question about all these fascinating new tools. How do you deploy AI within education? Clearly these are powerful things. I'm kind of surprised that one thing that has not come up today in today's conversation, the question about smartphones in schools and social media, et cetera. And so I'm sure that's something that the caucus has or will talk about. But there is this tension now. The question is, how do we foster innovation and deploy these new tools with an eye on this changed world while ensuring uniformity across the system and accountability within that system? And that is no small tension at all. And essential to that, and I think Nichelle points to it, professional development. Quite often, when all the funding is done for education, what is missing are sufficient funds to educate teachers, give them exposure to these new tools, make them comfortable with all these wonderful new innovations so they can properly implement them in the classroom. So like Anthony, I'm an old dad. I've got a 9-year-old in the Fulton public school system. And I'm sort of, on the one hand, encouraged. They've got a lot of cool digital stuff. But I worry about two things. One is, are we using those things right in ways that support the development of critical thinking, or will they be at the expense of some of the necessary sort of cognitive progression that we all benefit from? I also worry about inequity, right? So my school district is fairly well supported, but boy, they nickel and dime us parents every day. And so, our kids are probably getting a level of support that other kids can enjoy. We need to make sure that it's uniform across the state so everybody benefits.
Great. That's everyone, right?
That's everyone.
Okay, we are at the end. We have one. I just want give you all a minute or so to.
Well, it's going to be a minute and a half. A minute and a half.
So much more time.
Yeah.
Give a concluding statement, or you can make a little stump speech and tell us why we should vote for you, or whatever you want to say. We'll go counterclockwise, and we'll start with Ms. Henderson.
Thank you so much. As we close, Erin, I want to thank you for moderating. I'd like to thank Sarah and the Children's Caucus for this forum. It's very easy to talk about how we want to see equity and diversity and accountability in our schools, as if someone else is going to be responsible for the oversight of that and the metrics that are utilized to determine those outcomes. This is not a legislative position. We're not going to throw spaghetti at the wall after it's cooked and hope that it sticks. The superintendent of public instruction is a truly important position, as the superintendent oversees K-12 instruction across the state by working with local county agencies and school districts. And so that person needs to understand how these laws and policy can be implemented and how they can affect the language and the outcomes of these policies and these laws as they are being implemented. I have the background academically and professionally to make sure that this happens. And as the superintendent of public instruction, I will continue to fight for additional funding, highlight our special ed students, our foster youth, our at-risk students, make charter schools irrelevant, and make sure that our students succeed in ways that we have not imagined. Nichelle Henderson, candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barrera.
So just building on what Nichelle just said, California, our public school system decision-making is dispersed. Most of the big decisions in our state that affect our students and our families and our educators are made by local school boards. And we've got 1,000 school boards up and down this state. And so the first role of a state superintendent is to actually be in community, in relationship with local school boards, local school districts, local educators, and help them come together with a vision of what they can create that's going to, that's going to create a better future for their students. My experience in my 17th year as a school board member is I understand, the challenges and the issues that school board members deal with, but I also understand the opportunities. And we've got examples, not just in San Diego, but up and down the state, of school districts that are doing fantastic things because of decisions that they're making. And I want to be in community with those local school boards and lift up opportunities for local school districts to make better decisions. And when we do that, then we can come together as an entire state. And, when we think about our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation that made California the best public school system in the world, we can do that again. But the state superintendent has a job to pull us together, organize us, and help us see what's possible.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Newman.
Well, thank you for doing this. So Erin and Sarah, but especially Matthew, thank you for being such a good timer. Grateful for this conversation. To Anthony's original point, I think we're all fortunate to have, like-minded Democrats. You're not going to do wrong all in. If one of us will probably make the general, and then Sonia Shaw will probably be the opponent. So, really important. The Democratic values and a smart, thoughtful approach to education carries the day in this next election. Impressed by the quality of the conversation. I think, as contrast, was always a little bit disappointed with the level of engagement and the depth of conversation in Sacramento about education. So it's everybody who gets elected and who runs for office says how important education is, but quite often at the state level, the level of engagement has not been sufficient, and that's where I think the SPI, as many others have made the point, has to come in to connect, to engage, to illuminate new models, to bring people together, and then across this very complex system, this very complex and extensive ecosystem and economy of education, in which we have numerous stakeholders all competing for leverage, but all hopefully with the same broad goal in mind, which is to improve California education across the board. At the center of that are students and families. We need to make sure that they are always centered, and that we take an urgent and deliberate approach to education.
Thank you. And Mr. Rendon, you get the last word.
Thanks. I just want to again thank Erin and Sarah and the members of the Children's Caucus. Josh Newman's right. It seems that Sonia Shaw will probably end up in a runoff against one of the candidates on this forum. Republicans are coalescing behind Sonia Shaw. She is a school board member in Chino. She is a MAGA extremist. She has brought the culture wars into her district, into California education in general. She wants to eliminate DEI. She wants to discriminate against trans kids in our schools, and we can't risk losing the SPI race to someone like her. So it's important for all of us on this call and the folks in the CDP and the Children's Caucus to make sure that we're well prepared for one of the individuals on this forum to lead this state in this important job.
Great, thank you. I would just add that what we call culture war is something much deeper than that. That's going on, right? And so we are fortunate enough to be the people who have to somehow fix it, somehow rise to meet history, right? Okay, thank you all very much. Sarah, I don't know if you want to say something.
I would love to. First of all, I want to thank you so much, Erin. Erin has been amazing jumping in here.
Yes. Yeah.
So much.
Thank you guys very much. I learned a lot, and I'm as a voter, as a citizen, it was very helpful for me. So thank you.
And I also want to, of course, thank all of our candidates. tremendously. We have a long time. I think it's something like 8 months for the primary in June, if I'm counting right. Maybe it's 9, and another 14 months to the general. So there's much time to get much of this information out, but I really want to second and quadruple what Mr. Rendon is mentioning about Sonia Shaw and the possibility of this being a two-way race with her, which is just hair-raising. And I would encourage everyone to go and watch and familiarize yourself with the threat that she poses if you're not aware, which is maybe a good way to articulate to say about the Children's Caucus. We have a website, condemnchildrenscaucus.org, and we have a Facebook group. I think you can just search on Condemned Children's Caucus, and this information is in the chat. A lot of people have posted a lot of information about Sonia Shaw. One good thing is she does show lots of good media opportunities. However, I guess they read differently to different people. Maybe that's attractive to some. Anyway, please familiarize yourself. Jump in, get engaged. Also toward that end, I think we're all in agreement that Prop 50 is extremely important. And I would like to encourage you to consider joining us this afternoon. I'm not sure if any of our candidates could, but you are our leaders, and we would love to see you there if you can. 2 p.m. There's a website, a phone bank being run by Kadem. The link is in the chat. And the more you paddle, the more power you have to run these rapids. I think everyone should engage. And
Can I quickly say something, Sarah? I just really want to thank you because I know you did a lot of work on this forum and just an incredible amount of time that you spent. So if we could all give her a round of applause. It was a lot of work that she put in. Thank you all for coming.
but
and thank you all to the candidates.
Yeah, I appreciate that because it reminds me of one important point. I haven't actually broached this with the candidates, but my fantasy would be to take those 90 plus questions, there's a lot of duplications, and fashion them into an opportunity for candidates to respond if they want in a written fashion, or if there's something you feel that you didn't express fully, whatever. I want to make our caucus available to you in any way that can help promote what it is that you would like to put out there. And in turn, I would ask that people, come check it out. Come look at these words. I mentioned this to one of the candidates who is not here right now, who said, "Oh, that sounds like a lot of homework." So I want to make this available, but also not to make it compulsory or to be a demerit if you do not fill it out. So, or any of it. So let's be in talk and figure out how we can do this without, in the best way that floats everyone's boats. I mean, the idea here is to get information out there, certainly not to be a ball and chain around anyone's neck. So stay tuned, and this a video of this will be on our YouTube channel.